Having begun my series on New Jersey state parks with the parks that are closest to New York City, I now continue with the Northern New Jersey series with the parks located in the skylines of New Jersey, the northwestern tip of the state where we can find the highest point in the state. So the series continues with Hopatcong State Park. It is 163 acres that became a state park in 1922, surrounding the 2,500-acre Lake Hopatcong, the largest lake in New Jersey. Originally, this lake was part of the Morris Canal, a 90-mile waterway that ran from Newark to Phillipsburg and was the chief means of transporting coal, iron, and zinc across New Jersey from the Pocono Mountains of the Delaware River to the New York Harbor. It had 23 lift blocks, 23 inclined planes that were built to overcome the elevation change of 1,674 feet. Hopatcong State Park is relatively small, but the lake that it faces is certainly big. And this is the canal that it served, the Morris Canal, that began at Phillipsburg, rose towards Lake Hopatcong, and then descended again towards Newark, with a sea level canal going from Newark to Jersey City at the Hudson River. The Morris family, contributing a lot to the country's founding, very prominent in the Bronx and New Jersey, and their name also appears on Morris County, which is located near the midpoint of this former canal that declined by the end of the 19th century as railroads became much more popular and more efficient in transporting goods. But there are remnants of the Morris Canal that could be found throughout northern New Jersey, including at Lake Hopatcong State Park. Kittatinny Valley State Park. This is a state park that's also located in the Kittatinny Mountains, and it's located at a crossing in the railroad lines, both of which have since been turned into trails. Dedicated as a state park in 1994, it is 5,656 acres, includes Lake Aeroflex, interesting name, also known as New Wawayanda Lake at 119 acres, as well as Gardner's Pond, Twin Lakes, White Pond, Sussex Valley Rail Trail. That rail trail was originally a railroad built in 1848 known as the Sussex Branch, bringing iron ore from the Andover mines down to the Morris Canal, and later included farm products, freight, and passengers. Along its way, there's also Cranberry Lake, a popular resort for city folk escaping to the countryside. The railroad ceased operations in 1966. Gradually, that right-of-way, which appears on the state park map as this red line going through Kittatinny Valley, and between 1979 and 1982, it was gradually converted into a rail trail at Kittatinny Valley State Park. And throughout northern New Jersey, you could find all kinds of abandoned railroads that have been repurposed as rail trails and those that have yet to become rail trails. This state park could be a crossing of the two. And one of those railroads that has yet to become fully transformed is the Lehigh Hudson Valley Railway that ran from New York near the Hudson Valley down towards Phillipsburg near eastern Pennsylvania. Alamuchee Mountain State Park, 9,092 acres, dedicated as a park in 1966, has hiking, a private camp inside the park, and the Waterloo Village that has exhibits from the different time periods, including an old Native American village and a port along the Morris Canal that used to function here in the 19th century. The early 19th century Waterloo Village contains a working mill with grist mills and sawmills, a general store, blacksmith shop, and restored houses. This village was abandoned by the 1930s following the abandonment of the Morris Canal. And in 1967, the restoration of this village began. So it's sort of a New Jersey's version of the Richmond Town restoration of Staten Island, or the Bethpage restoration on Long Island, or most famously, Colonial Williamsburg of Virginia, a restored historical town. So these are just some of the images from this state park, which includes Native American housing, colonial and 19th century housing. Jenny Jump State Forest is a state forest created from disconnected parcels along a ridge. This is dedicated in 1931 at 4,466 acres, named for the 1,112-foot Jenny Jump Mountain. It includes the Greenwood Observatory, built by the United Astronomy Clubs of New Jersey, and writer John R. Neal used to live in this area, where he wrote sequels to the Wizard of Oz series of Frank Baum. Within the Jenny Jump State Forest, there's some caves and lots of hiking trails and camping. The name of this park is uncertain. Perhaps a girl who killed herself, perhaps a fictional character, but sounds like a nice name that brings in the tourists, located off of Interstate 80. Worthington State Forest faces the Pocono Mountains across the Delaware River. This state forest was dedicated in 1954 at 6,421 acres. It's enveloped by the Delaware Water Gap National Recreation Area. So it's national park land that surrounds this state park land. The land was donated to the state by Charles Campbell Worthington, an inventor and industrialist. This was his deer hunting preserve, part of a larger 8,000-acre property that straddled the state border on both sides, known as Buckwood Park, with a lodge at Sunfish Lake that's located inside this park. The lake would have been inundated by a reservoir in the 1960s, but a public outcry saved the lake from becoming a reservoir. Highest point here is the 1,527-foot Mount Tammany that faces the Delaware Water Gap, where the river goes through the Kittatinny Ridge on its way down to the Atlantic Ocean. And this is the Charles Campbell Worthington, created all kinds of tractors and early automobiles, and used his money to purchase this wilderness at the Delaware Water Gap, predating the national park. Wawayanda State Park, dedicated in 1960 at 35,524 acres, connected to Abram S. Hewitt State Forest, and has 60 miles of trails. Wawayanda Lake was created by a mill dam in 1790, originally known as Double Ponds, used as a sawmill and a grist mill, and it had the settlement of Cherry Ridge within this parkland. The iron furnace here, built in 1845, brought a lot of jobs to the area, but by 1900, industry declined. A YMCA camp was built on this site, and the New Jersey Zinc Company also had a camp here for its workers. The state acquired this land in 1960, and by 1963, it was known as part of the Green Acres program, preserving land such as this from being developed. The lake within the state park is part of the City of Newark watershed, which the city uses this lake during times of drought that continued until 1980. There's also within the park the Black Creek Historic Site, serving as a hub of Native American farming and trade. That was acquired from the town of Vernon in 2009. So it's at the northern end of Wawayanda State Park, some Native American archaeology that goes with the nature. And this state park is located along the Appalachian Trail that comes from the Hudson Valley into New Jersey at Abram Sue Hewitt State Forest, and then goes along the state line through Wawayanda State Park, past Pochunk Mountain, and then it enters High Point State Park at the state's highest point, goes through Stokes State Forest, and the Delaware Water Gap National Recreation Area, including Worthington State Forest, and then continuing on into Pennsylvania. So along the highest ridges in New Jersey, you can connect to the Appalachian Trail that is managed by the Appalachian Trail Club and the National Park Service. The Appalachian Trail in New Jersey, of course, has a book of its own, as well as some brochures and maps. And here you could see where it enters New Jersey, very obscure trail, designed to look undeveloped, worn out only by feet and markings along the way. And on its way to Pennsylvania, it serves as a walkway alongside Interstate 80 as it crosses the Delaware River through the Delaware Water Gap. Swartwood State Park can also be found along the Appalachian Trail. It was designated as a state park in 1914 at 3,450 acres. This was New Jersey's first state park. It has a grist mill dating back to 1838. And Glacial Lakes first proposed as a park in 1908 by state forester Alfred Gaskill. The park was expanded in 1961 through the Green Acres program. And the park also has its own conservancy group, the Swartswood Lake and Watershed Association, to protect the water quality of Swartswood and Little Swartswood, a name that in Dutch means black woods. Stoke State Forest, designated in 1917 at 16,025 acres, that was created when Governor Edward Stokes donated 500 acres of land on the Kittatinny Mountains. Inside, there's the Sunrise Mountain, second highest point in New Jersey at 1,653 feet. Has the 8-acre Stony Lake with its own beach. And Lake Oquatunk has a 6-acre lake shaped like a letter U. There are 11 cabins around the lake that can be rented, and it also includes Buttermilk Falls, a small waterfall within the Stokes State Forest. The High Point State Park needs no explanation behind its name. That was designated in 1923 at 15,413 acres. The land for High Point State Park was donated by Colonel Anthony and Susie Dryden Cooser. That was designated as a park. The landscaping was by the Olmsted Brothers firm, the sons of Frederick Law Olmsted of Central Park and Prospect Park fame. The High Point Monument on top of the highest point was built in 1930 at 220 feet. That adds to the top of this 1,803-foot mountain, still shorter than the World Trade Center of New York. But it is a mountain, and with this High Point Monument, it makes the highest place in New Jersey just a bit higher as you look north towards New York's Hudson Highlands and Catskills. Within this park, there is historical signage designating the impact of the Olmsted Brothers firm and the history of parks, from Central Park to Yosemite Valley, that in 1864 was reserved as state parkland, then Yellowstone being the first national park, Niagara Reservation, the first state park in New York, and then we go forward towards New Jersey, where the first state forest was in 1905, and then by 1923, High Point State Park was designated. Before this was a state park, the Cooser family had a mansion near the top of High Point, and it was a very popular tourist attraction, but then after becoming a state park, it gradually fell into disrepair, and the state had trouble raising money for it. And then what happened to it? Well, again, by 1969, when it declined, 1977 was completely abandoned because of unsafe conditions, and then demolished entirely in 1996. Yes, there are many state and municipal parks that have historical mansions inside them, but there are many more that could have been saved. So could imagine if this was still here, it would rival the Bear Mountain Inn of the Bear Mountain State Park in New York. But for now, all we have is this historical sign near the summit of High Point. The next examples will take us to some historical houses that are within northern New Jersey. One such place is the Hermitage at 4.9 acres, designated by the state in 1970, located in the town of Hohokus. Love the name. 1767, the original colonial estate was purchased by Anne Bartow de Visme. Visitors to the house during the Revolution included James Monroe, the future president, Judge William Patterson, his family's name is on a city in northern New Jersey, and the young Marquis de Lafayette, who assisted us during the Revolution, Alexander Hamilton, and a Maryland commander named William Alexander, nicknamed Lord Sterling, being descended from Scotch nobility, and the future Vice President Aaron Burr. 1782, after her loyalist husband, Jacques-Marc Prevost, was killed during the war, Theodosia Prevost, who lived at the Hermitage, married Aaron Burr. In early 1970, 15 people interested in saving the Hermitage met with state officials, and 3 days later, state workers started clearing the brush, installing security lights, and patching the roof. By November of 1970, Governor William Cahill approved the state acceptance of this property, the Hermitage in Hohokus. Another historical house within northern New Jersey is in the town of Caldwell at 207 Bloomfield Avenue. This is the Grover Cleveland birthplace. Built in 1832, Grover was born here shortly after in 1837, followed by his sister Rose. Their father was pastor Richard Foley Cleveland, who had his pulpit at the neighboring church. Family moved to Buffalo, New York in 1841, where Grover developed his political career. And his sister was a writer, never married, lived with a woman, but at the time people wouldn't be out gay, but everybody kind of knew about it. But Grover Cleveland, of course, had his own interesting personal history as president at age 49, marrying a 21-year-old bride. But again, all those stories aside, you could learn here about the early life of Cleveland. And the house was managed by the Grover Cleveland Birthplace Memorial Association, which purchased the house in 1913 for use as a museum. And in 1934, the state took it over. Boxwood Hall this would be the last historic house for this episode. It is located at 1073 East Jersey Street in Elizabeth and associated with the nation's founders, Elias Boudinot and Jonathan Dayton. During the short period from 1777 to 1787, the Articles of Confederation were the governing document of the United States. And under the Articles, we had presidents. They had very little power and very short terms. And one of those Confederation presidents was Elias Boudinot, a descendant of French settlers. In the 1930s, this building was threatened with demolition. A nonprofit was formed to rescue it and turn it over to the state. It underwent restoration in the 1940s, this very, very tiny state park, the Boxwood Hall State Historic Site in Elizabeth. For the next video, we will go into central New Jersey, and we will talk about state parks on the ocean front, state parks on the Delaware River, another canal, the Raritan and Delaware Canal, and the funny named Cheesequake State Park. So this will all be in the next video, and I thank you all for watching. Thank you very much.